This is the Grappler Dry Show, episode 32, Väinö Ketonen. Hello and welcome to episode 32 of the Grappler Dry Show. Today we take a trip back in history where we uncover a story of one of wrestling's forgotten warriors. I'm your host Brett Summers, and in today's show, episode 32, we tell the story of Väinö Ketonen. Sometimes his name is seen as Waino or Waino with a V or W, but according to Finnish research it is pronounced Rain. So hopefully I've done that justice and I'm not hated by a whole nation now. Now, Rain is a Finnish cotton mill boy who became a world champion and stood toe-to-toe with the greatest middleweights in history. He trained Olympians and humbled carnival wrestlers, yet never really played the game of showbiz wrestling. And also, he may have planted a little seed in the future of catch wrestling at the same time that we'll get to later. This is the story of Väinö Ketonen, hooker, champion, and one of the toughest men you've probably never heard of. Rain was born July 5, 1888 in Tampere, Finland, to a working-class family. Like so many children of his time, he entered the workforce young at the Finlayson cotton mill. At the mill, he began showing an interest in gymnastics, a discipline that gave him strength, balance and flexibility, all traits that would serve him well for the decades to come. After finishing primary and night school, Rain left Tampere and drifted around Finland, taking whatever work he could find. This included pouring cement, rafting timber, working at the Helsinki shipyards, laying railroad tracks in Vasa, and then he got to Helsinki, where he entered his first wrestling tournament, which in Finland at the time was Greco-Roman style. So in 1989, Rain goes and wins the regional championship and then took a silver at the national lightweight championship, and then in 1910 he won the national gold medal. Known already then for his flexibility, skill and sporting demeanour, he looked beyond Finland. Like many Finns before him, he boarded a ship for America, determined to make his name there. Rain settled in Massachusetts, living with his cousin's daughter, and began wrestling professionally. His first match ended in a no decision thanks to a leg cramp, but he still managed to bag $20. His next big contest, which he would later describe as the most brutal match that he had ever been in, was against Frit Hansen in what would become known as the Match of Nations. Finnish fans wagered about $1,200 on Rain, while Swede and Irish fans put about the same up for Hansen. The match was reported to be chaotic and very violent, and police stopped it midway and refunded all bets. In the first months of 1911, Rain wrestled frequently across New England. December 21st, 1910, in Brockton, he defeated Carly Monte. January 6th, in 1911, he was in Worcester, where he lost to Peter Gotts. On April 3rd in Worcester, he beat Tom Duchenzi. May 22nd in Worcester, he had another marathon bout against Fritz Hansen, which was stopped after 2 hours and 42 minutes before a crowd of 1,200 people. In 1911, Rain travelled to Wigan, England, the heart of Lancashire catch-can wrestling. Managed by Edward Levasseur, with Tom Duchenzi as a training partner, Rain issued a bold challenge: "I will throw any British welterweight twice in an hour, or take 2 out of 3 falls against any middleweight." On July 29, 1911, in Atherton, Rain beat Jack Bailey convincingly. Then, on August the 26th, before nearly 3,000 fans at the Wigan Football Ground, he faced Jack Young Whistler Carroll, the British favourite. The result was stunning. The first fall took 6 minutes and 35 seconds, and the second fall took 3 minutes. The Sporting Chronicle marvelled at his unorthodox style, low stances, strange grips, and quick counters. You never knew you were in them until you knew you couldn't get out. He used his double elbow hold to catch Carroll mid-bridge and pin him. He also fought heavyweight Jim Foster on a football field, a punishing 90-minute bout. Foster was awarded the match on points, but the crowd booed the decision. It was also during this time in Wigan that Rain coached a young gentleman by the name of Billy Riley, who would go on to make a little bit of a name for himself too. Between 1911 and the early 1930s, Rain wrestled nearly non-stop. His records count more than 1,000 matches in Boston, Chicago, Salt Lake City, Duluth, Dallas, Canada, and hundreds of other smaller towns. One of his fiercest rivals was Mike Yokel, Utah's middleweight champion. In 1914, Salt Lake City, Rain lost to Yokel after injuring his shoulder. In 1950, in Duluth, Rain avenged that loss, defeating Yokel in straight falls, the first to ever do so. Yokel humbly admitted, "He is one of the greatest of all middleweights. I underestimated him and lost." He reclaimed the world middleweight title several times, including wins over Yokel in Eastbourne 1917 and Boston in 1919. Other highlights and victories come from defeating a young Gotch, Jack Collins, Conor Albright, Walter Miller, Ernie Arthur, and George Walker. Farmer Burns himself called Rain the best welterweight I've ever seen. He also coached J.F. Olin, who went on to win silver medal at the 1912 Olympics and later defeated Joe Stecher. By the 1930s, the American wrestling business had become entertainment, and Rain refused to play along. On the carnival circuit, he became a legend, once beating every wrestler and being paid $2,550 to leave, only to return and win again. Frankie Kane remembered, "What a hooker! Nobody could touch him. He was good enough to beat just about anybody, but promoters wouldn't use him because he wouldn't play the game." Kane also recalls Rain's eccentricities, drinking gallons of water a day, sleeping in hotels instead of on the merry-go-round, endless duck walks, and carrying around an encyclopedia of human anatomy. When he wasn't wrestling, Rain lived quietly on his farm in Rutland, Massachusetts, about 13 miles from Worcester. He married and had a daughter and then a granddaughter, and on the farm he was known to raise chickens and pigs and continued to wrestle on local shows, defeating younger men when he was well in his 50s. He retired in 1934, but continued to wrestle into the 1940s. Rain died on December 1st, 1974. Historian C. Nathan Hatton wrote, "At the beginning of the last century, when professional wrestlers had to be real, there was almost nobody better. Rain was king of the middleweights." Frankie Kane called him one of the greatest carnival wrestlers I'd ever seen. In Finland, his style was dismissed as too raw. In America, he was too real for show business, but among real wrestlers, he was deeply respected. So, from Tampa's cotton mill to championship bouts in Wigan, from smoke-filled halls to dusty carnivals, Väinö Ketonen stayed true to himself, real, relentless, and unbowed. Thank you for joining me in honouring one of wrestling's forgotten kings. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, or share it with other grappling fans. As always, you can keep track of what we were doing at the grappleofyoureye.com, and you can follow us on social media, on Facebook and Instagram and all the others. If you'd like to listen to our podcasts, we are now available on Audible, as well as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the usual podcast apps that you can find. And if you like to watch your podcast, you can watch us every week on YouTube. New episodes drop Thursdays at 7 a.m. UK time. To the end of this week's episode, where we took a look back at Väinö Ketonen. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week with another guest. So in the meantime, please stay safe and stay on the mats.
I tend to tell people, from an amateur wrestler to a professional wrestler to a cage fighter to being the alpha male of senior citizens now.
I would definitely recommend BJJ. I say quite frequently, I think it's really helped Clay. It's given him some structure, it's given him discipline, and also, but probably the most important thing, it's given him a routine. I mean, with the training, he knows where we're going to be, what day. He goes into the same gym or the same gyms now, because he trains at different gyms. And yeah, it's helped him. It's built relationships with his peers. He's got great friends. He's got some great role models in the gyms that he trains at, with not only the coaches but all the adults that are there. And it's just a great environment. It took me by surprise. It wasn't what I expected when we first walked into a gym.
And it's interesting in that there are a number of tournaments that are promised and organized with the Future Federation. And in one of them, there's a clause there will be tournaments with strikes involved, but they will be held under different regulation. And I saw that, and I completely missed that the first time I read that document, right? And I'm going, holy cow. I think that our forefathers, our founding fathers, they had the wisdom to see that a competition rule was going to drift away from the reality of combat, and that a rule set with strike was necessary in order to maintain that foot in reality.
When I qualified for the Olympic Games and being the first female in wrestling for New Zealand, I think that really took the cake. I think that was the best feeling ever, and I think about it often still, and it still makes me feel really good.